What is up, universe? Jose Young's back here with Jose Shorty Torres, UFC flyweight. Jose Shorty Torres, how's that sound now?
I could officially say that, and it's finally starting to settle in. I'm really happy about it.
And before we get into the UFC card and the Fallout stuff, I have to ask about these shoes. I mean, these are custom, what kind of, Nike? Custom Nikes with your name on them?
It was technically custom Nike. We had a guy here who just wanted to make shoes for me, who had my logo, and he buffed out one of the Nike symbols and put my logo just plastered on the side, and it was an awesome, fan gift. It was just like, oh, this is definitely different.
Sure.
So I'm at UFC events, and UFC fighters who've been there for years are like, dude, I don't even have my own custom shoes.
Perks of being a UFC fighter, I guess. Yeah. Now, we're almost a week out from your last fight. You finished Jared Brooks, and for those of you who haven't seen it, you've been living under a rock because it's been on ESPN, it's been on FS1, it's been like Yahoo picked it up. It was on the front page of Yahoo. Your opponent knocked himself out. What's been the reaction that you've gotten, considering that highlight is the highlight of the night, pretty much?
It's the best case scenario, mainly for a last minute fight, because yeah, technically I was losing the fight. If people watch my fights, that's how I fight. I'm always losing the first round, either getting dropped, getting beat up, bloody, whatever the case may be. And then second, third, fourth, fifth round, because I had fought championship rounds before, I'm just pushing forward, doing my thing, and I was slowly starting to do that in the second round. Just never really got the opportunity to capitalize, but. Landed a couple knees, he shot him, picked me up. I was able to lock the body, so he wasn't able to arch, which caused him to force himself to try to do a big slam, which he was trying to do, and he knocked himself out in the process. And it's a big thing. Again, your very first fight, I'm on the news more than Marlon Moraes knocking out Jimmy Rivera in, what was it, like 30 seconds?
33 seconds.
So it's just like, okay, I can't complain about this. Sure. Yeah, is it a lucky knockout? Sure, but my name is plastered everywhere, so it's best case scenario for me.
Have you talked to Jared since?
I haven't talked to him. We talked after the fight, which he was like the most polite gentleman in the world. I was like, oh, this is awesome, cool. And then immediately next day, he, put on Twitter all this stuff, and he got a lot of backlash for it. But overall, that's the type of publicity he's trying to get, and so be it, he's getting it. But he's doing his thing, but we'll see what's next for him.
And speaking of backlash, like you brought it up yourself, you lost the first round. I think it was consensus. Have you gotten a lot of heat online, like saying like, oh, you would have lost if you're how it would go?
Lucky me, I have a really proper fan base. Like, whoever follows me, I have no smack talk compared to like Kobe Covington. You go to his Instagram, it's all just smack talk. But there are some comments that are like, oh, you got lucky, you're getting your butt kicked, yada yada. I'm like, all right, so you haven't watched any of my fights.
Sure.
Like, that's perfectly fine. For me, I always start off losing. So I like to come back from adversity, and that's what I was trying to do.
What was the reaction from the UFC?
I mean, I never got any side details on like what they wanted, but I know some fans were going, hey, this might backtrack you a little bit because we wanted to fast track you. You just didn't have the performance we were expecting to say that, you're this, you're that, to believe the hype. That's what makes me that much more excited for my second UFC fight. And
do you have, I know we're not even a week out, but do you have a name or anyone you're eyeing for your next fight?
The biggest guy I really wanted to fight, and this is just more of a pride thing from Titan FC, is Tim Elliot.
Sure.
Given I believe he's suffering from an ACL tear, so he's going to be out for a little while. But Tim Elliot, he was the former champion before I was. So he was the only reason I got to fight for the vacant belt, because he won the Ultimate Fighter. Honestly, if I would have fought him then, I would have more than likely lost, because I was 2-0 fighting a guy, a UFC veteran, who just fought in the Ultimate Fighter. But I got to train with him, I got to live with him, I got to see how he is as a person. I mean, he's just an exciting person overall, not just a fighter. But I can just imagine finally getting in there and scrapping with him, because he's not there to put on just a performance. He's there to put on a show, a spectacle. And he's even stated about like not fighting Henry Cejudo because he doesn't want to get out wrestled. He wants to put on a show and put on a fight. That's exactly what I want to do as well, and I think that's just a show for the fans.
When do you want to get back in there?
I personally, I want to get the best training camp possible. I have some things where I'm helping other fighters and trying to better myself, not just as a fighter, but as a human being, to get as healthy as possible. Again, I wouldn't say I let myself down in my UFC debut because I didn't get to finish the whole thing. Thank you, Jared Brooks. But it's one of those things that I want to put on the performance that people were expecting. Nathaniel Wood put on a great performance. I want to do the same thing and top it. So it's, for me, I want a proper training camp, and I think September is probably the best time to do it.
And jumping to the UFC 225 this weekend in Chicago, your hometown, we're here in Chicago. A lot's been made on Joseph Benavidez, like the #1 ranked fighter in your weight class. He's on the Fight Pass prelims. No. He said it was weird, but he didn't really make a big deal out of it. No. I talked to Clay Guida yesterday. He said he didn't care where he fought. Rashad Evans doesn't seem to care where he fought. Where do you stand that the highest ranked fighter in your division isn't being featured?
It just shows how much the UFC belittles, the flyweight division.
Sure.
No doubt Joseph Benavidez is a veteran. He's a great guy and a phenomenal fighter, and he's #1 in the world besides, under Demetrius Johnson for a reason. But it just kind of showcases how much the UFC doesn't really care about the division. They're not invested in there, but they're also not invested in a guy who's lost twice to the champion. They don't want him to win the fight against Sergio Pettis to where he gets another rematch. Same thing with Cejudo. I believe he might be lined up to fight Demetrius Johnson, but honestly, no one wants to see that fight again. You lost in, what was it, 3 minutes of the first round, somewhere around there. So it's like you got dominated. It wasn't like it was a close fight like the Cody Garbrandt to TJ Dillashaw fight where they went back and forth. This was just one-sided, and you lost. Why do you get a title shot again? You beat one guy, which is Sergio Pettis, and I believe William Hayes or Wilson Hayes.
Wilson Hayes.
So it's like, I kind of get it, but you should be that #1, #2 guy that has to fight these top prospects. Sure. For me, I think if Sergio Pettis wins this fight, he's more than likely getting another title shot, unless he fights Jasir Formiga, which I believe is #3 in the world. But
and you have John Moraga just came off that
John
dominant
Moraga's
win
coming
over
back
Wilson
out of
Hayes.
nowhere. So for me, I'm hoping that I bring that excitement in the flyweight division. You saw me on SportsCenter, ESPN, because of the lucky knockout, but that's what I plan to do in the flyweight division in almost every single fight.
So because your name is everywhere, do you, in your mind, like you get 1-2 fights, like title shot or bust because people know who you are now?
The good thing about my background is I have so many accolades. My resume is so big coming into the UFC that you can fast track me, and I'm not afraid to fight any opponent. It's more of the reason I denied the UFC so long is everything's been 9-day notice, and I'm fat and happy like I am now. So it's like I'm 151 coming down to 126 or 125 in 9 days. I got lucky enough that I have a very, very professional team that got me down to it in a very healthy way. But any other fighter either would have missed weight or been in the hospital.
Who do you think wins between Benavidez and Sergio?
I think it's a really good fight between both. I've trained with both. Benavidez is a freaking leech when he gets on top of you. I mean, once he gets the team alpha male headlock and all that stuff, he's holding on. You're not going to get him off. But Sergio, he's just like me. He's a guy coming up. He has the experience of training with all these older guys. Former lightweight champion Anthony Pettis being his big brother. He's been guided properly, and I think guided properly by the UFC as well. I think he gets the knockout.
What other fight, like obviously the top 2 title fights, it's the first pay-per-view the UFC's ever brought to Chicago. You got Colby Covington, RDA, Whitaker, Romero. Outside of the top 2 fights, does any other fight catch your interest? I know we talked about Rashad Evans before he went on air. Overeem's on the card. Holly Holm's on the card.
No. I think, for me, I have to be 100% biased. You have Curtis Blades. We wrestled in college together. We both placed as All-Americans together. And he didn't know anything of MMA. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll try it. And he literally beat people training in a UFC gym because of his wrestling. Now he's knocking people out, or he's taking punches from Mark Hunt and still coming back and out wrestling them and putting on a show. And that's something that I'm really excited for because he's moved up so fast in the heavyweight division after losing to Francis Ngannou, but not being knocked out by him. It was more of a doctor stoppage. But he's coming back, and I'm excited to see. Hopefully he wins against Alistair. Maybe he gets a rematch against Francis Ngannou, or he gets a title shot.
And out of the top 2 fights, who walks away with gold?
Man, this is the hard one because I do train with Colby Covington and RDA is a former champion. They're both phenomenal fighters, but I can see Colby Covington coming out of nowhere with a huge upset, which for him it's a win-win. You look at 3 guys that fought Damian Maia, which was Woodley, Usman, and Colby. If you think about it, as much as you want to talk smack about Colby, he performed the best out of all 3 of them, and he put on the best performance against Maia, and I think he put a beating on Maia. But now fighting RDA, what is he going to do? I think he's going to be able to out-wrestle and beat him up like a Khabib-style ground and pound, and I think he's going to do a phenomenal job. But for him, again, he has interim belt and all the smack talk and all the haters, whatever you want to call them, it's just a huge thing for him, kind of like Conor McGregor when he beat Chad Mendes. But even if he loses, he made it that far in only, in a sense, 1 fight. So there's no loss for Colby Covington in this fight. So I'm 100% going with him. There's no pressure for him compared to RDA. He needs to prove the point, and it's a lot more pressure on your shoulders. But the main event, I think Yoel's going to pull it off.
Really?
The first fight was very close. I thought Yoel was winning the first half of the fight and doing a really well job. He just sadly gassed out. And Whitaker was able to do his thing and use his youth and just push forward. But I think Yoel Romero can push this off.
And before we finish up, I asked Clay and I asked Curtis this. Dana White came out and said he wanted to bring back the old style of weigh-ins, where you weigh in at 4 p.m., 24 hours before the fight. We talked in Utica, and you had 36 hours to rehydrate, and you loved it. Like you never had a fight like that. So it's safe to say you want to keep what it is now, the early morning weigh-ins, and not go back to the old way.
See, so I wrote plenty of papers on this in college. The big thing in college and high school was there used to be a day before weigh-ins. So it'd be the weigh-ins, you have a day, and then you'd wrestle. The problem is you had 3 kids who died in 1997 because of just weight cutting ideas, and they had heart attacks at 18 years old or whatever the case may be because they're overheating themselves. And so the NCAA decided to go, hey, you know what? We're just going to put it in an hour for dual meets, 2 hours for tournaments. So you have less time to recover. So mentally, you should be either I'm going to do a proper weight cut or I'm not going to feel good wrestling, so I should bump up.
Sure.
The only bad part was not too many people cared. They're like, oh, well, I guess I have less time to recover. That's about it. And I was the person, I have personal experience of that where I just didn't have enough time to recover. If I had a full 24 hours, 36 hours like now, yes, I'd have more time to recover. But you look at the UFC, guys aren't educated. That's the biggest thing. It's either educate yourself or bump up. Look at Darren Till, you look at Mackenzie Dern, phenomenal fighters, but mentally when it comes to the weight cut, they just look at whoever's done it before and they go, oh, garbage bag, sauna, hot bath, spit, laxatives, whatever the case may be, and they don't make weight. And then they look bad because of it. It's like, that's because you're not educated enough. When I turned pro, I immediately got a weight management specialist and everything's been perfect. I've never missed weight. I've done 26 pounds in 9 days, which I've never done in history. And for a flyweight, that's a quarter of my weight. So for me, when it comes to the last minute weight cuts, I believe the 36 hours, yes, is going to better help me. But when you have the guys who have Darren Tills, Mackenzie Dern, a 2-month, 3-month, 4-month training camp, you have nothing but time to make weight, there's no excuse. You can't blame your weight management specialist. You can't blame, this person, that person, whatever the case may be. There's always going to be outside scenarios where things happen. I've had them for multiple reasons, but I've always made weight. Why can't you? It's more the education. So I don't think it matters if you have a 24-hour weigh-in or a 36-hour weigh-in. I just think if you want to put on a better show, again, there's always going to be that fighter who just doesn't do it properly. I think 36-hour weigh-in is beneficial for just everyone and even the fans.
You heard it from Jose Shorty Torres. He wants to keep the early weigh-ins, picking Yoel, picking Colby, watch out for Curtis Blades, and Sergio. Did you pick Sergio? Sergio, and then he gets a title shot.
I think so. If not, he fights Jussier Formiga.
I'd love that fight. I'm Jose. That's Jose. See you next time.